I want you to try a little thought experiment with me for a second.
Yeah.
I was actually doing this with a friend over coffee yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
I asked him, if you had to draw the shape of your life, not the events, but the actual geometry of it, what would you draw? And he just, without even hesitating, he slashed a horizontal line in the air, left to right.
Right, the classic timeline.
Exactly. Birth is over there on the left, the end is way over on the right, and there's this little blinking "you are here" dot somewhere in the middle. It's comforting, right? It implies progress, we move forward, we accumulate things, we get somewhere.
It's the standard model of existence. It's tidy. It suggests that cause leads to effect, and yesterday, builds the foundation for today. But the problem with drawing a straight line is, well, what happens when the ink runs out?
Or the paper tears.
Exactly.
That's the question that really got me. I asked my friend, okay, that's the line, but where do you put the moments where you completely fell apart? Where do the gaps go?
And what did he say?
He just kind of stared at me. Because on a straight line, a gap looks like a bridge that's collapsed. It looks like
A disaster.
Yeah. And that is exactly where we are going today. We aren't talking about a minor delay or a bad day. We are talking about what happens when the narrative of your life doesn't just pause, but it fractures.
And for this, we're doing a deep dive into a really profound and honestly quite challenging piece of writing. It's titled Field Notes from Everywhen on Living in More Than One Tense by Jaime Hoerricks.
And just to set the stakes here, we are digging into a specific event the author experienced, a 36-hour fracture.
Right.
A moment of total silence where the inner voice, that sense of self, just vanished.
It's a terrifying concept, but the mission of this deep dive isn't really to analyze the breakdown itself. It's to look at the tool the author found to navigate it.
Okay.
Because Hoerricks didn't use a medical diagnosis or a therapy worksheet to make sense of this. They used a word, a single, strange, kind of made-up word, everywhen.
Everyone. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel, doesn't it?
It really does.
But this word promises to shift us from seeing our struggles as, clinical failures to seeing them as recursive thresholds.
Which I know sounds a bit abstract right now.
It does.
But stick with us, because by the end of this, you might actually look at the gaps in your own story with a little bit of maybe gratitude.
It really challenges the way we're wired to think about time and healing.
For sure.
So let's start with the before. Before this word, everyone enters the picture. How does Hoerricks describe the way we normally try to hold our lives together? The source uses this incredible image of polite houses.
Oh, I love this metaphor. It's what the author calls the narrative of Chronos. So Chronos is the Greek personification of linear time, tick-tock.
Right.
It's quantitative time, the time you measure on a watch. And Hoerricks writes that Chronos prefers narratives that are lined up like polite houses on a sensible street.
Polite houses on a sensible street. I can picture that perfectly. It's the suburban dream of the timeline. House number 3 is followed by house number 4.
Exactly. The lawns are mowed. The mail comes at the same time every day.
No surprises.
Zero surprises. It's the architecture of safety and predictability. If you live on a sensible street, you believe deeply in a specific contract. If I do the right things, I get the right outcomes.
If I work hard, I get promoted. If I eat kale and run, I stay healthy.
Right. It implies that order is the natural state of things.
It's the grammar of event and recovery, as the text puts it. And I think we're all guilty of trying to force our lives into that grammar.
Oh, absolutely. How so?
Well, think about how we tell stories about hard times. We say something broke, something returned, lessons were learned, and a map was drawn. We love the lesson learned part. It's like we can't endure suffering unless we can immediately monetize it into wisdom. We want to say, I had a breakdown, but it taught me to prioritize self-care, so now I'm better than ever.
Right. You want to wrap it up with a bow so you can put it back into the timeline and keep moving rightward. Because if you didn't learn a lesson and you just lost time, if you just sat in the dark, to Chronos, that is terrifying. That's just a void.
And that is exactly what happened to the author. Hoerricks describes an event that just refused to be a polite house. It was more like a sinkhole that opened up in the middle of the street.
A 36-hour fracture.
Yeah, and the descriptions in the source are incredibly visceral. A silence in the field.
The vanishing of inner voices.
The one that really stopped me was a hollowing of presence.
That hollowing of presence is so key to understanding the terror here. We all have that running monologue, right? The narrator in our heads that says, I am me, I am doing this, I am going there.
Yeah.
Imagine if that narrator just quit. For 36 hours, you are physically there, but the you that inhabits the body is hollowed out.
And naturally, when something like that happens on a sensible street, the neighbors panic, or rather, our internal neighbors panic.
We assume the house is on fire.
We assume something has gone horribly, horribly wrong.
And we do what the text calls putting on the clinical coat.
The clinical coat. I feel like I've worn that coat a few times.
I think we all have. Hoerricks writes that this event was initially standing in the queue of explanation.
That is such a relatable image. Standing in line, holding your ticket, waiting for someone in a white coat to tell you why you're broken.
It's the reflex of the modern world, right? If something disrupts the linear flow of Chronos, we immediately medicalize it. We look for the label. Is it burnout? Is it dissociation?
Is it a chemical imbalance, a neurological glitch? We want to label it so we can contain it?
Because if it has a label, it's a problem to be solved. And if it's a problem, there's a solution. A pill, a therapy, a strategy.
Something that gets us back to normal, back to the polite houses.
Precisely. The clinical view asks specific questions. What went wrong? How long will this last? And how do I make sure this never happens again?
It sees the silence as an error code.
Yeah, a glitch in the system that needs to be debugged.
And the author was stuck there. Living in the world of Chronos, trying to fit this scary, silent, hollow event into the polite row of houses. But it wouldn't fit. The source says the event seems sealed in the language of loss.
Which makes sense. If you view time as a commodity, something you spend or save, then losing 36 hours of yourself is a theft. You've been robbed.
But then, and this is the pivot point of the whole deep dive, something disrupts the disruption. It wasn't a doctor. It wasn't a prescription.
It wasn't a breakthrough in therapy. It was a word.
The text says, then a single word arrived and refused to behave.
Everyone.
Everyone. It sounds like something a child might invent, or I don't know, maybe something from a dream. But the text calls it an uninvited translator.
Right.
I want to pause on that distinction because I think it's crucial. Why a translator and not an explanation?
That's a really deep point. An explanation usually comes from the outside. It imposes a framework on you. You have X condition. A translator works with what is already there. It suggests that the silence had a meaning, it had a language, but the author just didn't speak it yet.
So the event wasn't meaningless or broken, it was just untranslated.
Exactly. And Hoerricks digs into the philosophy of language here. For a mind that operates in gestalts, seeing the big picture all at once, a word is never just a label or a sticky note you put on reality.
The quote that grabbed me was, "It is a doorway with weather on the other side."
I love that line, weather on the other side. It means that when you change the word you use to describe your life, you don't just change the description, you change the atmosphere.
You literally change how it feels to live inside that memory.
Yeah.
So let's walk through that doorway. We step out of Chronos and take off the clinical coat, and we step into Everywhen. What's the weather like here?
Well, the first thing you notice is that the wind is blowing in all directions at once. Everywhen, it destroys the timeline. It suggests that time is braided rather than sequential.
Braided. So instead of beads on a string, one after another, it's strands weaving over and under each other.
Right. In a braid, a piece of hair from the beginning touches a piece of hair from the end. They interact, they support each other. Hoerricks says this word allowed them to see the event from the underside.
And it shifted the question from how long to which layer. Which layer? That stops me in my tracks. How long is an endurance question? It's about grit. How long can I hold my breath?
Right.
But which layer is a depth question.
Yeah.
It's about archaeology.
It implies that during those 36 hours of silence, the author wasn't stuck on the horizontal line. They were traveling vertically. They were accessing a different layer of the self that linear time just can't account for.
And this reframe changes everything. The clinical code calls it a breakdown.
A dead end.
Everyone calls it a threshold. A breakdown is where the car stops smoking on the side of the road. A threshold is a door. You walk through it to get somewhere else. But let's get practical for a second. Because braided time sounds poetic. And it's a beautiful concept, but how does it actually help when you're in the middle of a crisis?
Sure.
When you're feeling that hollowness? The text brings in another Greek concept here to help explain the mechanics. We talked about Chronos, the ticking clock.
Right.
But now we meet Kairos.
Yes, this is the counterpart. If Chronos is the quantity of time, the seconds ticking by Kairos is the quality of time. It's the opportune moment. It's timing.
I've always heard Kairos explained as like comedic timing or the perfect moment to strike a deal.
That's part of it. But in this context, it's deeper. It's a moment that steps out of the flow. It's vertical time.
Okay.
And the text calls that 36-hour silence a kairotic interval.
Okay, kairotic interval. What is actually happening inside that interval? Because from the outside, from the Chronos perspective, it still looks like the person has just shut down.
This is my absolute favorite image in the entire source material. Hoerricks writes that the silence was a time where the architecture went backstage to mend.
The architecture went backstage.
Yeah.
It's such a theatrical idea.
Think about it like a play. You're the audience. You're watching the narrative of your life unfold. Scene 1, scene 2. Suddenly, the curtain drops. The lights go out.
Darkness, silence.
And if you're the audience, or if you're living in that mindset of Chronos, you're sitting there thinking, disaster, the show is over, the actors have quit.
I want a refund.
Right. You're uncomfortable. You're booing. You're wondering when the show will go on. But, and here's the shift. What is happening backstage?
The crew is rushing around. They're changing the set. They're fixing the props. They're reinforcing the beams that were about to collapse.
Exactly. It's chaos, but it's constructive chaos. It's purposeful. Hoerricks argues that the silence wasn't a void. It was a gate. The architecture of the self, the very structure of who you are, had to go offline to be repaired.
That gives me chills, honestly, because we usually interpret that offline feeling, that brain fog, that numbness, that inability to be productive as a sign that we're broken.
But this suggests it's actually a safety mechanism. It's the meaning mind taking over. The text says the architecture went backstage to mend. And that word mend is crucial. It wasn't just resting. It wasn't just taking a nap.
It was knitting something back together that had unraveled.
Yes. But the catch is, the conscious mind, the part of us that likes polite houses and sensible streets, isn't allowed backstage.
No. It's a hard hat area. We're locked out.
And that's where the fear comes from. We confuse our exclusion from the process with the cessation of the process. We think because we can't see the work, no work is happening.
So the Everywhen perspective asks us to do something incredibly difficult. To trust the darkness. To trust that the interval is doing something vital.
It shifts the focus from the scary symptom, which is the silence, to the necessary function, which is the mending. It's a profound act of trust in one's own psyche.
This ties into the concept of recursion the author mentions. The text says, everyone unlocked a recursive view. Now, usually when I hear recursion, I think of like computer loops or that movie Inception. How does it fit here?
Well, in a linear life, a Chronos life, the past is behind you. It's gone.
Right.
In a recursive life, the past is a layer that is always present. It returns to breathe through the present.
Breathe through the present. That's hauntingly beautiful.
It means that the 36-hour fracture wasn't just some random accident. It was the past and the present colliding to create something new. The author says, Everywhen allows the event to speak in more than one tense at once.
Which explains the title, Living in More Than One Tense.
Precisely. And if you are living in more than one tense, then a breakdown isn't a snap in the line, it's a seam.
I noted that word too. The fracture became a seam.
Think about sewing. A seam is where two pieces of fabric meet. It's actually stronger than the rest of the fabric. It's doubled over.
It holds the whole garment together.
It does, and that is such a hopeful reframe. If you view your trauma as a fracture, you're broken, you're damaged goods.
But if you view it as a seam, you're customized, you're tailored.
And you're deeper. The text says you become thicker than sequence. You have texture. You aren't just a flat line anymore.
But to get there, to actually feel that seam as strength, you have to abandon that grammar of event and recovery. You have to adopt the grammar of the meaning mind.
Yes. And this is the hardest part for, high performers or logical people. The meaning mind doesn't work like a spreadsheet.
The text says it follows scent rather than signpost.
Scent rather than signpost, and relation rather than rule.
Let's unpack scent rather than signpost. A signpost is clear. Turn left for happiness. Turn right for success.
Retire at 65. It's unambiguous. It's Chronos. But scent. Scent is elusive. It triggers memory. You smell wood smoke, and suddenly you're 6 years old again at a campfire.
It's intuitive.
It's associative. So the meaning mind navigates by feeling connections, not by following instructions.
It reveals the quiet intelligence beneath Chronos.
That phrase is important. Quiet intelligence. We live in a loud world. We think the loud thoughts, the planning, the worrying, the analyzing, those are the smart thoughts.
But Hoerricks is suggesting that the smartest part of us is the part that operates in the dark. When the lights went out for those 36 hours, that quiet intelligence took the wheel.
It knew the architecture was unstable, so it pulled the curtain down to fix it.
It reminds me a bit of the body's immune system.
Oh.
You get a fever, you feel terrible, you just want to lay in bed, stare at the ceiling, you feel unproductive.
You feel like you're wasting time.
Yeah. But biologically, your body is fighting a massive war. It's doing the most important work possible.
Exactly. And if you tried to force yourself to go run a marathon while you had a fever, because that's what Chronos says you should do today, you'd do serious damage. You have to respect the interval.
So if we look at this through the lens of Everywhen, the 36-hour fracture wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a failure of the self.
It was a necessary renovation.
It was the underside of growth. I keep going back to that idea of words as translators. The event itself didn't change. The 36 hours still happened. The silence was real.
But the word everywhen changed the relationship to it.
It depathologized it. It took the clinical coat off and put on, maybe a weaver's apron.
A weaver's apron. I like that. It suggests that we are crafting something. When we are stuck in the narrative of suffering, sometimes we don't need a cure. We just need a new syntax.
A way to speak about it that doesn't make us feel like failures.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how many other problems in our lives are just waiting for the right word to unlock them.
It really does. We spend so much energy trying to force our messy, recursive, braided lives into those polite houses. We want to be house number 4 on the street.
And when we find ourselves floating in the sky or sinking into the ground, we feel shame.
We feel like we're failing at being human.
But Hoerricks is saying, no. You are just experiencing Kairos. You are in the everydigavite. So let's bring this down to the ground for the listener, because most people listening probably haven't had a fugue state or a 36-hour psychological fracture.
All right.
But everyone has hit a wall.
Absolutely. Maybe it's a career plateau. You're working hard doing the Chronos stuff, but nothing is moving. You feel stuck. Or maybe it's grief. You thought you were over it. You passed the 6-month mark, but suddenly it hits you again like it's day one.
And the standard advice for those moments is usually push through, get back on the horse, fix the glitch.
Or analyze it to death.
Yeah.
Why am I feeling this? What did I do wrong? How do I fix it?
But Field Notes from Everywhen offers a different protocol.
The protocol is stop looking at the watch. Stop asking how long. Recognize that you might be in a kairotic interval.
The curtain is down, the lights are out, it's scary.
It is scary, but the invitation is to believe that your internal architecture is backstage right now, and it is mending. It is reinforcing the beam.
It is knitting the seam. And your only job isn't to force the curtain back up. It's to let the mending happen.
To respect the silence as a gate, not a hole. And to listen to that quiet intelligence. It knows the way by scent. It knows how to weave the past and present together into something that can actually hold the weight of your future.
It's a radical permission slip to step out of line. Yeah. Literally. To step out of the linear timeline.
To inhabit your own everything.
Oh, it completely changes the way I'm going to look at my own bad days.
Yeah.
Instead of I'm stuck, it's
I'm deepening.
I'm adding a layer.
Right.
Yeah. We've traveled a long way in this deep dive. From the sensible streets of Chronos, where everything has to make sense, through the scary silence of the fracture, and out through that doorway of Everywhen.
Into a world that is braided, recursive, and deeply, quietly intelligent.
It's been a journey from the clinical coat to the recursive seam. And I think that's a wardrobe change we could all use.
Definitely. It's lighter. It fits better.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought to carry with you this week. We all have those moments of silence. The writer's block, the emotional numbness, the days where the story just seems to stop. And the instinct is to fill that silence with noise or explanation, to fix the line.
But here is the question. If your most difficult silence is actually a doorway with weather on the other side, as Hoerricks suggests, what would happen if you stopped trying to board it up?
What if, instead of asking, why is this happening to me, you ask the Everywhen question, which layer is trying to speak right now?
And what quiet intelligence might you finally be able to hear if you stopped listening to the ticking of the clock?
That's the challenge. Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you in the next layer. Take care.